1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
With the crack of the bat, we are off and running. It is Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
That dude wrote a trilogy of books all about 1 year. But that 1 year, 33 different championships. Amazing, amazing stories, amazing people. Charles, thanks for sharing the stories with us.
Love being here. We got Matt Fox in the studio,
too.
No, I'm just going to I'll be in the background making stupid comments.
He's our little sidekick guy.
That's it, man. It's we're in sidekick heaven today. We just wrapped up taping the Man Cave Happy Hour, and now we're off and running.
Surprise!
With Detroit City of Champions. We're gonna have some fun. It's gonna be a good time. Charles, we're deep into the Red Wings. They had
we're real deep.
Amazing.
Real deep.
So the regular season was nuts.
Regular season's over.
Back and forth, brawling with the Blackhawks.
Yes.
And it was just up and down, back and forth.
The season pretty much had everything that you could expect out of a hockey season.
Yeah.
How many lead changes as far as first place goes happened?
We have that
in
on the
last
chart.
10 games?
It was. I mean,
but just
they only
the last 10 games.
There was plenty.
It was. Yeah. It was a lot.
Lots
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah. So they got down like at the beginning of the season. You know, they at one point they moved into first place, and then they only dropped out of first place one time.
Right.
And that was following I think it was following the Blackhawks game on Christmas night. I think that was the first, that was one of their big dips. But
fair enough.
But after that, it was like they got real close till they got tied with or one game ahead at first, and they were at one point they're like 5 or 6 games up, and then they're one game up, and then they're a couple.
The
games
beginning
up,
of the season was miserable. They were way out. They're the hitless wonders several episodes ago.
Yeah.
And
then at the end of the season, that was actually their biggest danger because they went through a huge, I think it was a 6-game winless streak.
Right. The only thing that saved them was that other teams were having a bad run too.
Exactly. The Blackhawks and the Bruins were also losing, and then so that the season basically went in towards that last game against the Blackhawks, which was, I could call it, the penultimate game of the season, the second to last game, and it was basically all on that line because if the Blackhawks would have won that game, then it would have created basically a 3 or 4-way tie for first place. All the teams would have been locked up, and then as a result, when the Red Wings beat the Blackhawks, they clinched first place in the American Division, and then it left a 3-way tie with the other 3 teams for second place, which actually necessitated a quarterfinal in the hockey. Usually there was only 2 rounds. You'd have 2. They've been tinkering with the playoffs for years, but in this case, it created the need for in this time there's only 2 rounds of the playoffs. There's a semifinals and a finals, but then this necessitated a third round to break this tie between these 3 teams.
Yeah.
And so the Red Wings would have been in that group if they had not won against the Blackhawks and just literally clinched first place.
So Matt, the playoff hockey,
yes,
because we're living here in the 21st century, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Wings games. I've been to 1 playoff game. And the energy that's coming in this game, Charles, it sounds like it's because this is and again, you say what comes up in the record books is this is the longest game ever played.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the title of the episode.
Today, yeah.
So Matt, do you ever go to have you been to playoff games?
I've been to a handful of regular season games because tickets were cheaper.
I was going to say, because I haven't. I've been to 1, and it was a gift because I'm way too cheap because they get expensive around the playoffs.
Yeah, they do.
Charles, do you do many events? Live events?
What, at the games?
Yeah. Do you
not
go
really?
No.
I
I like to go to.
I used to, but not. And I've never been to the Red Wings playoff game.
Right.
But I am happy to say that I did go to a game, and I sat in Dan Cleary's seats for a Red Wings game at Joe Louis Arena. And then I did take my daughter to a game against the Las Vegas Knights at Little Caesars Arena.
Oh, that's cool.
So I've been able to experience both venues so far. And it's always fun. The atmosphere around hockey in itself, but to sit there for how many hours did this game go on?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get to it.
But
No.
So, but I just because I like going to at least one game of every sport, in a season. If I miss one, it's usually the Pistons. I'm
Yeah,
not a big basketball
I've
fan.
I've just never really gotten into going to games in person. I've watched, I mean, I don't even know how many games, but I usually, and I used to be the type to watch every single game on TV.
Right.
But I used to
I just love the experience.
Yeah, well, true. And I've been to plenty of games, but it's not ever really something like in the last few years. I don't think I've even been to one game for any team.
Okay.
As somewhat of
It's funny, and you wrote the book on 1935.
Yeah. Well, the state of
it's funny.
No,
I know. It's a different beast altogether.
And I'm not a connoisseur of sports. I enjoy sports. I enjoy watching sports, but when I'm watching it live, it's a very different experience. You actually have to pay attention,
Sure,
because things move so much more faster when you're in person. Even at hockey games, football games, things move so much faster. So you're watching on TV, great. You got the slow mo, but you don't get that really when you're live.
I was really waiting for him to put a blue laser on the puck. And have it.
Yeah.
Once they can do that,
Wait, they did that.
Back in the day, on the screen.
Hey, why is that puck in
That's
in aisle
awful.
6?
It's
I don't
awful.
get that.
It's awful. Oh my god!
Yeah,
what a wreck!
Yeah, they tried to
experiment.
experiment those things.
That was funny. Anyway, so but we're moving in. The season was just up and down, back and forth.
It's a crazy
battle
season.
royale.
Like, one of the things I was really trying to convey when we did this, we spent so much time on the regular season, was this idea of just like I guess the underlying thing I was trying to convey was that basically every history book, if there is a mention of the Red Wings 1935 championship, which is rare, but if there is a mention, it's like they were a great team. They won, they swept, ran through the season, and then they moved on to the playoffs, and then they went to the longest game ever. You know what I mean? Like it was like the regular season is usually just like a sentence.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They never. So I wanted my goal was for spending so much time was to show how all the events that led up to, this is a franchise itself that had been up and down, and names changed, and in the gutter at the beginning of the Great Depression, and they're newly named the Red Wings only a couple years prior,
right? And
that all these things are happening. They have this tremendous rivalries going at this moment. I wanted to try to show. The overall goal with all of it is to try to bring these people to life.
That's our entire mission. That's our entire mission is
to show that it's not just a simple sentence and a word. There's a reason these people. This was the moment that Detroit fell in love with hockey.
Right. More people should know about this, and that's our entire mission.
Yeah.
And
it was this very specific team in this very specific series of circumstances. This is what led Detroit to fall in love with hockey.
The trifecta.
Yes,
but fall in love with hockey.
But fall in love with hockey.
To be hockey town.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like we as today, when we go to these,
there's a 4-story monstrosity called Hockey Town now. With a big spinning puck on top.
What I'm saying is that we fell in love. Detroiters are absolutely,
which I love.
We're hockey town. We're this. The Red Wings are an institute. They're one of the most recognizable franchises in all of sports
in the freaking
world. Absolutely. And they're one of the most recognizable brands that there is, but this was the year that it really all started, and that's something like it never gets anywhere near the credit that it deserves.
Yeah, I like a recent trend in the last probably 4 years has been rap artists, urban R&B rap artists sporting Red Wings gear.
Oh, they've been wearing rocking Red Wings gear for a long time.
But it's actually becoming a little more prolific in the last couple of years.
Well, the Red Wings logo is just so iconic,
right? It is.
Yeah.
I mean, the Detroit, the D. I mean, Eminem's got the tattoo.
Sure.
Kid Rock, and so many people have the Detroit English D for the Tigers, and that's so synonymous with Detroit. I just thought it was cool that
it's recognized
because hockey isn't always coming down from Canada, and it's boring. It hasn't been as cross cultural as other sports.
As the Red Wings,
it's getting more and more like that. It's becoming more and more cross cultural, and it's getting away from the Russian Five, and there's more people from the States playing. I think, and I think it's cool that and they're sporting the Red Wings logo. I just love it. I love it. The wing wheel, man.
Like this, again, this is where it all started, and there's a reason why. It's not just some kind of random thing where it's like, well, we got a hockey team and it just kind of grew over the course of time. No, there was a spark that drew these people there, because now they're cheering for a team that the Tigers had won. Joe Louis had done his thing. Was still doing his thing,
and
was still doing and then the Lions had won, And so now the Red Wings represented the final championship necessary for Detroit to claim a larger title, a larger idea of the city of champions, and to do something that nobody had ever done. And now all of a sudden, that's what, like I say, that's what drew these fans to it, was the larger story, and that the Red Wings, it created a new storyline around this team.
So then let me ask the question. Is this the first time in history in 1935 that one city?
No, 1927, New York did it.
Okay, New York did it.
But they also had twice as many teams entering the field of competition, because they had 2 hockey teams, like 2 or 3 football NFL teams, 2 or 3 baseball. They did 3 baseball teams.
So Detroit was
more.
So Detroit was next up on the list.
So there nobody's done it since 35.
Right.
But in the 27 they did it. But there was
New York may have had 6 in 27, but Detroit
they had 3. They had 3.
But in all total, how many?
They had 3 championships. Detroit.
No, there was also sharpshooters, and there was.
You mean in Detroit in 35? Yeah, they had 33 championships. That's what I'm saying.
New York didn't do that.
No. I did a comparison in the second book.
Yeah, they didn't have Garwood. They didn't have Walter
saying.
Hagen. They didn't have Joe Louis.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, so the 3 majors that New York replicated, but nobody's ever done what Detroit did in 35.
On the plaque, because we talked on the City of Champions Day, on Champions Day, we talked about the plaque, and on the plaque, they removed Joe Louis.
Yeah,
right?
because
they moved the boxing.
Because at the moment they were making the plaque, Joe Louis had gotten beat by Max Schmeling in the first Schmeling fight.
Right. And they put a diver in, right?
Exactly.
They put, so who was that?
To me, that's the only black mark from the entire City of Champions story was
removing
the boxer from the plaque, because in all fairness, though, Joe Louis had not won his heavyweight championship up to that point.
Yeah.
And so there, he was the greatest fighter alive, but he had not won the championship. And so, when they're doing
was it a mistake to put him on there in the first place?
Not at all. It was,
because he was on such a rise.
He was the most famous person in the world. He was an international superstar.
Okay.
I mean, in the second book, I got a French magazine where he's on the cover. It's like, this is Joe Louis. It's all in French. And like Joe Louis, the most recognizable athlete in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when Schmeling beat him, though, it was a major, it knocked the wind out of everybody's sails regarding Joe Louis. It was a major, so it was kind of like,
Will and can he rebound?
He's the uncrowned champion, but now he's got to, leapfrog a couple guys just to have a chance at the heavyweight championship.
Sure.
So so at that exact moment, the plaque was being built.
Right. So who is this diver that they put in?
His name is Dick Degener, Degener.
All right. Was this what type of competition? Was it an Olympic competition?
Detroit had swimmers and divers and all this stuff.
Okay, so it was like the world's competitions or whatever.
Yeah, they had the world's they had national championships in the swim team, and they had a national championship. So Dick Degener was the greatest diver who ever lived.
So all right, so we'll do an episode on Dick.
Oh hell yeah, maybe he's one a major star in 1935.
Couple, maybe more than one. Right? Did he ever jump a horse off of a thing?
I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. Well, I'm not kidding, but I mean that was like one of those sideshow things. You would have a horse diving off a high dive.
Some of the best pictures I have are of him jumping off diving boards and stuff. I got some great shots.
So was that a good call to put him on? It was a bad call taking Joe off. All right, bad call taking Joe off. If you're gonna take Joe off,
at the moment they made the decision, I'm saying, but that's the one.
So is there something else that's like, oh, dude, they should have put Garwood on, or they should have?
It doesn't take away from what Joe did in 1935.
No, I'm not saying, but you take Joe out of the equation. All right, we need another one. We got the 4, we got 3, we got baseball, football.
Well, they're doing the engraving, so that was the easiest thing to convert it to. They'd already cut out a boxer, and so maybe that was the easiest thing to convert a boxer into.
Okay, all right. No, I was just curious. If you, in your opinion, you're like, oh no, they should have recognized Garwood, or they should have,
Well, yeah, like I say, there, it was just one of those things. They recognized Joe Louis at the City of Champions banquet. All those things. So it's just it's the interesting. It's the fact that we're looking at it from 80 years later and saying we wish that they would have kept it. What I mean? But at the time he wasn't the champion, so they're not. And that's one of the biggest sort of like mistaken things is that Joe Louis was champion in 1935 and he wasn't. But I make a case in the book, in the second book, that what Joe Louis did in 1935, I'd say this was the greatest, regardless of the fact that he won a championship or not. What he did in 1935 was the greatest individual season in the history of American sport. And I make a case for that's literally the entire arc of the Joe Louis section of my second book, was making a case for why Joe Louis in 1935 was the greatest individual season in the history of American sport.
Okay.
And so when added to that, if my case is proved correct, if my logic is proved to be, if you accept that line of thought without even reading it, but if that is proven to be correct, then factor in this idea that we have the greatest individual season in the history of American sport, coming in the midst of what I say is the greatest overall season in the history of American sport. And so that puts that in a realm that will never be beat. Like, so it's not only the greatest season that ever has happened, but potentially the greatest season that ever will happen. So that's sort of where we're at. But we're getting off the topic a little bit. I want to get back.
All right, yeah. So the Wings and the success they had in the season leads to this playoff, which is going to take up. How long typically, Matt? All right, play with that, Matt. I'm going to flip to the other camera. So how long typically were the playoffs?
So in this day and age, they were, like I said, they were changing the playoff structures a little bit. They were tweaking it every year, but at this moment in time, this was a very unique style of playoffs. Okay, so the way that they did it was you had 2 rounds. Okay, 2 rounds, and it was best of 5 semifinal and a best of 5 championship final. However, as I mentioned, in this particular year, the 3 teams in the American division all tied for second place. Oh, so it necessitated. It necessitated a playoff. They brought in a team from the Canadian division that was, at the top of the chart, and so they had it. So what they did was they had 4 teams in a quarterfinal. So there's a 3-round playoffs in this case. But the third round only revolved around those 3 teams that had to try to break this deadlock. All right. And so anyways,
were the Wings involved in that, or did they get a bye and they had to figure out who's going to play? But this
is what's interesting, and it's almost what's different about that playoff sim, what's really different besides just the number of games, was the idea that the Red Wings were going to play the Montreal Maroons. Okay. And the Montreal Maroons were one of the greatest hockey teams ever assembled. Right. And so they won the Canadian division of their. So that's what's different is in today's structure, the way it works is like the strongest team would play the weakest team. Yeah. In this case, it was the 2 best teams in hockey playing each other first, right?
So pretty much the finals happened first.
There you go.
You're playing the bronze medal team,
and even in their day, there was criticism of it because they even said,
"Why does this make sense?"
It doesn't. They were even saying the same thing. There was criticism of it at this time, they were saying that the problem is that the 2 best teams in hockey get to batter themselves. Batter themselves to death, and then second or third best teams slip into the Stanley Cup Championship and have a team to knock off, have a chance to knock off the best of the team because they just got beat to death by beating the other best team. So it should have been like that. This is, I believe they switched it up after this year, but that was a major downside and a major negative of this year. Was not a negative of the year. But this was a major sort of issue was, even in their day, they complained about the idea that the 2 best teams were going to play each other first, which basically makes no sense. Right. So, but anyways, regardless, that is what happened. And so, but what I wanted to, we were talking about last week and I would talk about it right now, is that I wanted to introduce the Montreal Maroons to kind of give a little bit of an idea of just what the Red Wings were facing in the first round. Let me know when you need
which of these graphics.
Okay. Yeah. So just sort of an overall, everyone, when you hear Montreal Maroons, people today are like, who's that?
Nobody's ever heard of them. That's all I remember is Bugs Bunny. What a maroon.
So the Montreal Maroons, so to this day, people, hear the Montreal Canadiens. That's the NHL team that exists today.
Did they derive from? Did the Maroons turn into the Canadiens?
No, not at all.
All right, sorry. Okay.
So the idea is that inside Montreal, there's basically Montreal's a bilingual city. You see, yeah. So it's a bilingual city. Yeah,
that's all I got.
And so, but not only is it bilingual, but there's also been sort of a divide. There's literally, they all are bilingual, but there's sort of a half of the city that's French speaking, and they're diehard French. They've kept their French culture, French heritage, and they're they're determined to keep it that way. And then you've got an English culture. It's a result of the English and the British taking over Canada. The French have maintained their French culture, whereas the English and British have done their thing too. So the creation of the Montreal Maroons was a result of wanting to give the English speaking community in Montreal their own team. Okay, so the Canadiens were a French team, and they wanted to give the English speaking, they call them Anglophones or Anglophiles. They wanted to give the English speaking portion of Montreal
Those
their
would be the
own
Maroons.
team. Yes, and so the name Maroon was never really an official name. They just they had maroon jerseys and tan pants. And
Here comes the Maroons.
Yeah. So anyways, and so they just basically they came around in 1924. 1924-25 was their first season. And when they came in, they didn't even have, like I say, they didn't really have an official name, but they wore maroon colored jerseys and people just called them the Maroons. And so they just kind of adapted that into their name and started just, that became what they were called. So, but what's interesting, so the Montreal Maroons, if I wasn't a Red Wing fan, this would be my favorite team.
Okay.
Like still, I mean, like seriously to this day. They are my second favorite team, and it's because of, if you actually dive into their who played on these teams and just how cool they were. I mean, like that. There's sort of a historical aura around this team, at least for me.
Okay. And
so in their second season with as the Maroons, their second season in the NHL, the Montreal Maroons win the Stanley Cup. In 1925-26, they win the Stanley Cup championship.
Is that one, the one we got?
No, just I'll
all right,
you.
Fair play.
So anyways, over the course of time, the Maroons are one of the most competitive teams in the entire NHL, and this is they're every single year they're in the top of the league, or they're competing for a playoffs.
Canadiens were
the Montreal Maroons.
Maroons, okay. I'm sorry.
So anyways, over the course of their 14-year existence, because they were one of the casualties of the Great Depression in 1938, they played from 1924 to 1938. So over those 14 years, they made the playoffs in 11 of those years. They were in the playoffs. They were an incredibly competitive and talented team. Absolutely. Some of the best players that ever come through the NHL came through the doors of the Montreal Maroons. They're one of these teams that, eternally struggling with money, always having to sort of, they identify a talent. The guy would be awesome, become a legend, and then they would, he would get sold to the
shopped out somewhere else.
Boston Bruins,
it was like your
an
damn
American
farm
team.
team.
Basically, yeah, they were a great team, and they would lose their players because they couldn't afford to keep signing them.
Kind of what the Olympians were in 1935, almost, right?
What the Olympics?
The Olympics. Yes.
Well, no, they weren't. No, not at all. They weren't like that at all, actually, because they were an NHL team. The Olympics were an IHL. They were literally a minor league team.
All right,
but the Montreal Maroons were a talented and competitive NHL team year after year after year after year. The problem is that they couldn't maintain their best players. They were forced to sell them off because the Boston Bruins or New York Americans or these American teams had more money than them. They would poach their best players.
That was
from
the
them.
A's in Moneyball.
Yeah, so it's more. They're more. If anything, they're
fair.
If anything, they're closer to the baseball is to the Tampa Bay Rays. But they were far more competitive than the Rays consistently. Like I say, because when they would lose those guys, they would replace them, and then the team would be good again. They weren't missing a beat. That's the difference. And so they were, like I say, they were in their era. They were a incredibly highly respected team in a the Maroons were good year after year. Whereas the Red Wings, they kind of built this organization over the course of time. They were good every single year. You always were expected to have a good game against the Maroons. And so. So they played they played in the same stadium as the Montreal Canadiens, which was the Montreal Forum, which is a legendary type building. So going into 1933-34, which is how this all coming into. So like I say, there's this tremendously competitive team. And so the next sort of person that's integral to understand regards to the Maroons in 35-36 is a coach, general manager named Tommy Gorman. And you can throw him up on the screen. We got a picture of him. So Tommy Gorman is one of the most legendary names in the history of hockey. So not only was he one of the founding members of the NHL, he had a role in founding the NHL, but this is a guy who he's in the NHL Hall of Fame, the Ottawa Hall of Fame, and also the Canadian Horse Racing Hall of Fame.
Huh.
So I mean, this guy, he's
Horse Racing Hall of Fame.
This guy he's done everything, and this guy won in his career. He won 7 total Stanley Cups, and he won, and he's the only man in the history of sport, in all of sport. It doesn't matter what sport you're talking about, baseball, football, hockey, the major sports anyways. He's the only man to win his championship with 4 different teams. So like everywhere this guy goes, he's winning Stanley Cups. And so in 1933-34, he is the coach and general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks. And so he took the Chicago Blackhawks from last place to first place in a single year, and that was the team that beat the Red Wings in the Stanley Cup championship, their first appearance in the Stanley Cup.
Wow.
So Tommy Gorman is the coach and general manager of the Blackhawks that beats the Red Wings in their first Stanley Cup championship.
That's wild.
All right. Yes. And so then he gets into a disagreement with Frederick McLaughlin, the guy he's the owner of the Blackhawks.
Was it his neighbor?
No,
I'm just kidding.
No. So anyways, so he gets into an argument with Frederick McLaughlin, with the owner of the Blackhawks. And so he basically like leaves the Blackhawks and he's like, so I'm going over to the Montreal Maroons. So the very next year, which is 1934-35, he goes to the Montreal Maroons and he turns them into a Stanley Cup winner.
Right.
So he wins back-to-back Stanley Cup championships
with 2 different teams.
And he says this about the team he built in Montreal in 1934-35, which was the greatest team that ever stepped on the ice. And I have the quote in my book, but I just kind of wrote it down here for ease. He believed that the 34-35 Maroons were the best team he ever built, but the best team that skated the ice of the NHL.
Right.
That's what he said. And
he would know.
These are the
he was
words
there since the beginning.
Yeah.
Are these the words of Gorman here?
That was Tommy Gorman, what he said
right.
about that 34-35 Maroon team championship that he built. So there's 2. So he went back-to-back championships. Now, 1935-36, this is the 3rd year in a row. This is the same 34-35 Maroon team that he claimed was the best team in NHL history.
So you got to know they're playing.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, so Tommy Gorman's won 2 Stanley Cups in a row with 2 different teams, and now he's gunning for his 3rd championship in a row. This is the Maroons team we're talking about here. The coach and GM is a friggin' legend in the history of the NHL. I mean, he's one of the best team-building coaches ever. And the team that he's bringing to this game, he claims, it was virtually the same identical team. It's almost the same exact team that he ran out in 1934-35. This is the team that he claims the best team in the history of the NHL. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is not some powder puff team that got rolled over by the Red Wings in the playoffs. This is one of the best teams ever. Okay, so anyway, so one of the guys that Tommy Gorman was like sort of one of the players that is absolutely essential into understanding the 35-36 Montreal Maroons is a guy named Lionel Conacher. And so his nickname was the Big Train. And we have a slide of Lionel Conacher too. So the 3 credentials we talked about with the Hall of Fames for Tommy Gorman, listen to this guy's credentials. Okay. Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, Canadian Football Hall of Fame, Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, Ontario Sports Hall of Fame, NHL Hall of Fame. And the Lionel Conacher Award is the award still given out to this day by the Canadian Press to the male athlete of the year.
Yeah, I hear that. I listen to a lot of Canadian radio.
Lionel Conacher.
I listen to the CBC, and that name comes up.
He was voted at, I forgot when this was voted on, but he was voted as Canada's best athlete of the first half of the 20th century.
Okay.
So here's a quick little.
That's a monster.
So here's a couple little quick credentials. 1921, he wins the Grey Cup in football. He's the Grey Cup. He was one of the best players on the Grey Cup, which is it was a Canadian football champion, Toronto Argonauts. Yeah. Toronto Argonauts are very well-known team name. So he won the football championship with the Toronto Argonauts. In 1926, he's playing baseball for the Toronto Maple Leafs in a baseball team that won the International League Championship, which is a AAA championship. So he wins a baseball championship just a few years after that.
Do you know what his stats were during that season?
Oh, I'm trying to run down. We've got a bunch of,
fair enough. I'm just curious.
Oh, if anybody that's interested in Lionel Conacher, man, there's a lot of, I'm telling you, I've got a comic book on Lionel Conacher. It's like they did a 1950s, like sort of like a retro, like after, like to talking about the history of hockey. And I have this incredible Lionel Conacher comic book. It's just so great. And so, he's just so legendary. So yeah, so he was with Tommy Gorman in 33-34 with the Blackhawks when they beat the Wings. in
my
the
God.
championship.
Nice.
And then Tommy Gorman brought him to Montreal in 34-35 to help him win with the Montreal Maroons.
Jeez.
So I'm trying to paint this picture. This is a guy that wherever he goes, he is winning
He's
championships.
winning. Yeah.
Okay. He is a monster.
Yeah.
He is a monster. And then there's from what I was kind of reviewing my notes today, various wrestling, boxing, and lacrosse championships. Okay. I don't even know the dates. Yeah.
Really?
It's like, it's just a quick note. Just to summarize the story.
Well, here's the thing about
various wrestling sport. You know what I mean? Like he's got so many of them that you just have to put various.
So I think his career was sports.
Absolutely.
It's
He's one of the
about
greatest
athletes today are get so specialized and they get so focused, and that is the problem. It's actually if they get to college, it's interesting how like college baseball players become, or like college football players become baseball players, or college baseball players become football players.
Right.
I think it's interesting, but a lot of times they're very, very focused on their sport, and even through high school, and then it's causing like injuries like crazy in young people. It's these repetitive injuries because kids would play baseball, and then they would play football, and then they would play lacrosse, and they would play different, and you'd use different muscles, and you do it in different ways.
Bucko McDonald, they viewed Bucko as the sort of heir to Lionel Conacher because Bucko McDonald had come from the lacrosse fields, similar to Lionel Conacher. And then he was a big bruising defenseman, just like Lionel Conacher. In fact, leading up to this playoff matchup, that was one of the big matchups that they were saying was that Bucko McDonald was the new Lionel Conacher. How was he going to face off against the old Lionel Conacher? The Lionel Conacher.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like that was like his guy that they were tasked to sort of face off against.
Yeah.
So that was the matchup that the media was touting was this new the new versus the old. So anyway, so this is one of the guys in the Montreal Maroons. Okay,
Yeah.
Lionel Conacher. He's like an absolute legend. All right.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the guys. Another one of the guys, which is also one of my favorite players from this early era, is the captain of the Maroons. His name is Reginald Hooley Smith. Everybody knows him today. Everybody, whenever you hear his name, it's Hooley Smith.
Right.
But his first name is Reginald.
Reggie.
Yeah. So he's the center. He's the center of the Maroons. He's the captain of the Maroons. We have another graphic with Hooley Smith. In this graphic, this is a graphic that we've used on numerous shows before, because Hooley Smith played with Jack Adams on that 1926 championship Ottawa team.
Damn.
Yeah, that was I believe that was his first season in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of his first couple seasons in the NHL.
But then what we're going to talk about, the longest game was against Jack Adams as well.
No, Jack Adams, the coach of the Red Wings.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get ahead of myself.
Yeah, no. I'll tell him. I'll go with the story.
Enjoy the ride, man.
Yeah,
Enjoy the ride.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. So Jack. One of the things we talked about in a previous episode was there's the Ottawa Senators had this in 1926-27. They had this incredible team that won this Stanley Cup. In this one team, this very special team,
It's just doing its own.
Yeah, this very special team, this Ottawa Senators team, had like every person on this team was like involved with this Red Wing story in so many different components.
Yeah,
the graphic that we're using right now is like the 5th time we've used this graphic.
Oh my God, yeah.
The coach of the Detroit Olympics, Matt, the coach of the Detroit Olympics was the trainer of the Ottawa Senators, not from 1926. There's so many players. In fact, when we get to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the finals, there's 3 more guys from the Ottawa Senators. I think there's 3 more guys from this Ottawa Senators team that all play a role in this cup. This one team was like just an absolute powerhouse all-star team that like after that season was over, they just kind of like dispersed across the NHL, and they all sort of synced back up in this one year. Like they all sort of crossed paths. So it's just fascinating. And that's what I'm saying. And Hooley Smith is one of these guys. The fact that this Hooley Smith, he is a Hall of Famer. He himself is a Hall of Famer, but he is he's basically like the Steve Yzerman of this Montreal Maroons team. He's a longtime captain. And he is he's like the heart and soul of this team. He's the scorer. He's a two-way player. He's everything. And early in his career, there's this isn't necessarily to do with 35, but a few years prior, there was this legendary line called the S line that with 2 other guys whose last names started with an S, named Nels Stewart and Babe Siebert, who this line was one of the most famous and feared lines in the history of the NHL, especially in these early days. Like this S line, like they were like almost, I mean, they were like basically like unstoppable. They're incredible. And so they're like anytime you ever look up Hooley Smith, they're like one of the feared members of the S line. like it's like anybody that looks back at 30s and 40s hockey history, they're like the S line, you know what I mean? Like it's just almost like mythical of how good they were. And he was one of these, one of the key components of this line. Jeez. And so, which was this line for the Montreal Maroons. So anyway, so the Maroons got Hooley Smith in his prime. Okay, that's who they got. That's their guy, right? And then the last guy I want to talk about is a guy named Lauren Chabot, who is the goalie of the Montreal Maroons. He was acquired actually in mid-season of the 1935 season by Tommy Gorman in exchange for a fellow we talked about last week, or 2 weeks ago, Toe Blake, who's the guy that started the big riot at Olympia when he tried to club Ebby Goodfellow with his stick. Yeah. That was the guy. So Toe Blake himself became a Hall of Famer and is one of the greatest hockey players of all time, actually, or at least in the early days of hockey. Just a tremendous player. And so he came to that. He came from the Montreal Maroons in exchange because the Maroons were having a bit of a goalie situation. And the guy they got, Lauren Chabot, the Maroons knew who they were giving up in Toe Blake. Toe Blake was a tremendous player. He was even in this season. But the guy they got, Lauren Chabot, I'll give you a little bit quick rundown of him. All right. He'd already won two Stanley Cups, one with the Rangers in 1927-28, one with the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1931-32. In 34-35, which was the year prior to this 35-36 season, he'd won the Vezina Trophy as the best goaltender in the NHL. He was the first NHL player on the cover of Time Magazine. And that's what another graphic we have to show up on the screen there. Is I actually have the Time Magazine cover with him on it. That's the first NHL player ever on the cover of Time Magazine. In Hockey News, after his career's over 2010, Hockey News listed him as one of the top 100 NHL players of all time. He was ranked number 84. The 20th best goalie according to their list, and he's the only person in the entire top 100 players of all time that's not in the Hall of Fame. So even though Lauren Chabot isn't in the Hall of Fame, he has the credentials to be so. So he is a tremendous goalie. This is a guy they're facing. So this is the guy the Red Wings are facing in goal, who is one of the best premier goaltenders in the entire NHL. And the Maroons knew it. That's why they traded one of their top talents, which was Toe Blake, to get him. And and this is a quick little fact, the second longest hockey game in the history of the NHL, he was the goalie and he won that game. That was in 1932-33 with Toronto Maple Leafs.
The second longest.
Yes. Which leads us to
the longest game,
which is what we're about to start out talking about.
And it took us a while to get to the longest game.
Yes. But this is, I'm trying to paint a picture. I want to paint a picture of the team they're facing because the story about this longest game ever, it's always been like, oh, they played the Montreal Maroons. It was the longest game ever. No, it was incredible. It lasted for, everybody runs down how long it was and the score and whatever. But there's no context about the game itself. Right. The reason this game like this, this is a battle of heavyweights. Right. All right. The Red Wings are an incredible team, as we've seen all year long. They had this slugfest in the regular season, and now they go into the playoffs against the top team in the Canadian division. That's like one of the best teams ever, coached by one of the best coaches, GMs ever, with one of the best goalies ever, with Hooley Smith and one of the best, Lionel Conacher and a series of all these other guys. It's a list: Baldy Northcutt, Dave Trottier, Earl Robinson, Gus Marker, Alan Shields, a bunch of other guys. This is one of the best teams in the NHL history. And then without further ado, we can talk about this, the longest game ever, which was the very first game of the playoffs for the Red Wings. When they go to Montreal, they go to the Montreal Forum to face this team. And right off the bat, they have the longest game in NHL history, a literal slugfest with this thing.
What's the date of the game?
So I've got it right here. It was I'm terrible with the actual dates.
No.
So anyways, where's that? So I'm going to start with page,
because it's the very first game of the Stanley Cup playoffs, right?
It's the very first game of for the Red Wings. Anyways, I think the semi. I think they might have played the semifinals before they got there, but so anyways, okay. So here is So it was so the game was on March 24th was the game
of 1936.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to read to you sort of like a summary, just like a 1-page. There's this as you would imagine, the summary of the game is about 8 pages long.
Oh my
Of
God.
course, because
That's the longest game ever.
how
Yeah.
many hours?
Leo McDonald was banging the typewriter keyboard for a half a day to get this
You
story
need
out.
you need some ink to get that done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's Leo McDonald, our buddy, is going, my God, I got to cover this story.
Because this day and age, a normal hockey game lasts what, hour and a half, 2 hours?
Hour and a half, this an hour and a half, yeah.
Right. So
this game
was-
goes on for 6 hours.
Geez, so let's start at the beginning. So
Yeah. So this is a great because it's a nice little overview. Leo's his first page, the first page I'm going to read is a nice little sort of summary overview of all the stuff, and then I can talk. And I have a few more quotes about some of the particulars that were really interesting from that night. And so again, before I even say it, this game, like this is pretty much whenever anybody talks about the 1935 Red Wings, they'll mention that they won the championship, but this story is pretty much the only thing you ever hear.
Right.
You never hear about the regular season. You never hear about anything that came after this. You never hear about really anything that came before it. You hear about the longest game ever.
11 or 12 episodes on this already.
Yeah, there's every
But
single.
no,
thing.
I mean they've all been like really important too.
That's what I'm saying though, is that
this
builds. This is our take on the story. We're actually
Sure.
diving into it and setting the context and the framework. So so I'm going to read you the sort of the overall summary, the quick summary of it.
All right.
So Modere Mud Bruneteau, slim and sleek French-Canadian lad, just turned 22 and playing his first season on big time, this morning emerged hero from the longest, most bitterly fought game in the long and glamorous history of hockey.
I love the language, man.
Yeah, it's Leo McDonald's second to none. The clock pointed to 22 minutes after 2 when young Winnipeg boy's storybook goal came, breaking up a thrill-packed, puck-pounding contest that smashed records for time and sent the Red Wings flying out in front in their first game of their Stanley Cup Series with the Maroons by a score of 1-0. When Bruneteau ended the game, two great and thoroughly game but exhausted teams had played 176 minutes and 30 seconds of hockey, extending over nearly 6 hours, during which 10,000 fans were wrapped in amazement. So the title of this next break mark made in Toronto in 1933. Staggering up and down the ice on weary legs and feebly trying to check one another, the contest was in its 9th period, 6th of overtime. So 9 periods, 6 overtimes. The old mark was 164 minutes and 48 seconds, established in Toronto in 1933 when Ken Doherty's lone goal won for the Maple Leafs over Boston Bruins. Sharing fame with Bruneteau was Hek Kilrea, veteran of many cup playoffs and still ranking as tops among money players. It was Kilrea who pushed the puck into Montreal territory and made the pass that was scooped up by the alert Bruneteau and shoveled into the net past the startled Lauren Chabot, grizzled veteran who, along with Normie Smith, played amazingly in the nets. Brilliant in a remarkable display of batting and kicking out pucks, Smith turned in his greatest game and one of the finest exhibitions in the history of Stanley Cup competition. He more than matched Chabot in a thrilling duel that had Montreal fans marveling. As one and then the other goalies squirmed, stretched, and dived into smother and clear pucks rained in on them during the night's time-eating orgy. While Chabot was turning back 80 shots, Smith saved 75, dozens of which were seemingly goal-ticketed and coming in the hectic overtime heats when a goal meant victory in the sudden death system used in the series. Joining Smith in the distribution of glory were the Red Wing defensemen and Detroit's smart back-checking forwards who teamed in a magnificent performance that sent the Red Wing stock soaring as they prepare for the second game of the set here Thursday.
Man,
Leo's a wordsmith.
I just, the puck pounding.
Yeah, he's a word.
He's my alliteration king there.
Yeah, he is a NHL poet.
Yeah, I'd love hearing that.
The 12-year-old in me came out. He said orgy.
Yeah. Well, those are the words he uses to keep your attention.
Hell yeah.
It kept my attention.
Hell yeah. So that's the overall summary, was that you get the idea that you have this, this contest with goalies. The defensemen are going back and forth. Mud Bruneteau scores the goal. And so here's like sort of the next thing I wanted to throw in there too.
Yeah.
Page 86. This is a little bit of some of the particulars from the evening.
Yeah.
So what does it say? So this is a description by Mud Bruneteau, which we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Of the actual scoring of the goal. So he says, all I know is this, said Bruneteau. Heck had the puck and he was skating like the devil. He broke through the last two men and cut to his left. I swung down the right, turning towards the net. Just as I got there, Chabot lunged towards Heck, who who passed to me. I had plenty of space to shoot through, and the puck grazed his arm. I happened to be there, and that's all. Heck, Kilrea deserves the real credit. He's the one who made the play. I just batted it into the net.
You know what that's called, Chuck Charles?
With
What he just described? That's called puck luck.
Puck luck.
Well, but not when it comes to Heck Kilrea, who brought the puck down ice.
All right,
he was in the right place at the right time, but it was a bang bang play, which means Heck got it to him, and the puck was wide.
Mickey Redmond will often refer to puck luck.
Well, maybe, but this was a solid play. It wasn't like he just whammed it in and it just went in. He was like, he gives full credit to Heck Kilrea, because he says, Heck had the puck and he was skating like the devil. He broke through the last two men and cut to his left. I swung down to the right towards the net. Just as I got there, Chabot lunged towards Heck, which opened the goal space for him. We said right there, who passed to me. I had plenty of space to shoot through, and the puck grazed his arm.
All right, so
I happened to be there, and that's all. If it was another guy, he would have been open too. Then he was crediting the luck that he was the guy in that situation. But if it would have been virtually any other Red Wing in his spot, Heck would have got him the pass just the same.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just some fluke play. Like it was I like to think it was like all this action going on, and it finally swung around and the puck was open, and there it was.
And I said puck luck because that's just by happenstance the puck goes in. But what just happened, what you just described, is gentlemen reading each other's minds.
Yeah.
And knowing where they were going to be. Whoever it was going to be, they bang. Here's tape to tape. Goal is open because they did something right.
And it was, you're talking about, they're talking 6 hours of hockey,
oh,
and these guys were swirling around for 6 hours.
And what part of the game?
And you thought the Lions? You thought the Lions were the Iron Man.
It's the ninth period that happened.
Yeah,
so they're still reading each other's minds.
Well, there's this thing's going on for 9 hours. At this point, it's just become a marathon. Who can stand the longest and who can suck it up? I mean, there's descriptions in here. I spent a lot of time writing about these games in here. And they're talking about during periods they're drinking brandy with sugar in it and all this weird. I mean,
gotta stay awake somehow.
Well, yeah,
brandy with sugar in your water bottle on the bench. I like it.
Well, there you go, Jamie. And that's what they're saying is really it became like this grind out. Like think about, there's no Zambonis in this day and age.
Sure, no.
Oh, the ice must have been just.
They're just sweeping the ice. They're sweeping the ice chunks. So at the end, they're like skating on cement. I mean, this thing is. I mean, this is the very definition of who wants it most,
right?
God, and it's not to take anything from the Maroons saying like they didn't want it as much as the Red Wings, but I'm saying this was an absolute marathon grind out. Like this is final battle type.
And I forgot about because in the century that we're in, the 21st century, the ice has to be pristine. It has to be in a position.
Oh my God, yeah.
It has to be perfect for them to skate on. But you're going back to 1936 when they were skating on, as you said, concrete, right?
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much because there's no Zamboni. They can't refresh the ice.
Right.
They're just sweeping off the extra ice that they've carved out with all their skates for 9 hours.
Yeah.
So there's no extra ice being made.
9 periods?
Yeah, 9 periods. Yeah. So every once in a while, they could dump a little bit of water on the ice to try to get it to freeze a little bit. But I mean, how fast is it going to freeze?
It's not.
No. So the ice is just chopped up in chunks. And so that's what I mean. Like this is the kind of imagine. That's one of the things I guess. So
let me go back to puck luck. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm saying that's one of the pictures that I think a lot of times when you talk about just the stats, like how long the game was and how many extra periods it went to and all this, that doesn't get talked about is like, imagine after 9 hours, these guys are just literally they're just skating on like tenacity and just guts. I mean, there's like, if the first guy that can summon enough energy to make that final rush on the ice, they sees a little crease heading down towards goal. And you can see the goalie swings out, towards Heck, and then Heck still has enough energy to swing that pass over through all the ice chunks and debris to get it to Mud, and Mud slings it in. So Jack Adams has a great little quote here, and this is by Bob Murphy. Shortly after the game, where Jack Adams is sort of talking about in the game, like how dog tired they were and sort of what they were doing.
How many bananas and pieces of pizza can you eat?
Well, I don't think they were eating much of that. They were drinking bourbon and sugar. Bermudated sugar was what I read was one of the things that kept them going. But they, so anyways, so this is Jack Adams talking, and this is Bob Murphy reporting. He says, the fellows were down on the floor dead tired, said Jack Adams. No one was saying anything. This is between periods. This is the between periods before the final overtime period. So this is in between the 8th and 9th periods of the game.
Gotcha.
So the fellows were down on the floor dead tired, said Jack Adams. No one was saying anything. No one had that much energy. All of a sudden, Herbie, meaning Herbie Lewis, leapt to his feet, smiled, and yelled to the gang, "Say, fellows," said Herbie, who was trying to appear as fresh as a daisy, "isn't this a joke on Charlie Jacobs, the Olympia concession man? He's waited all his life for a hockey game that would go this long. He'd make $1,000 if this game had been played in Detroit. Do you know? Do you know?" asked Jack Adams, "that Lewis pulled the team right back into good spirits. He made them forget they were tired. Great. It was a great psychological move by one of the game's greatest. Our fellows went out and ended the game in the next period. I give this little wisecracker part of the credit."
Nice.
One of the concession vendors really needed the money.
Tons of money. Yeah. They would have made tons of money selling, all those items. So that's what he was laughing about for that. So anyways, one of the unsung heroes that, of course, doesn't get talked about and really never gets talked about for anything is Bucko McDonald, of course, our growing to be at least my favorite player. I think he's growing on the rest of the Jamie. I think he's become one of your favorites, Bucko. Yeah.
I love Bucko.
Yeah. So
I'm learning and I'm liking Bucko more and more.
So anyway, Bucko is unsung hero because he doesn't score. There's only one goal scorer, right? But the three biggest heroes of the night were Mud Brunito, of course, Normie Smith, who stopped, they say in the article, 75 saves, but I saw in other sources 90 saves or even 91 save. There's so many saves, sometimes you just probably lose track, but anyways, just, an incredible number of saves. So those are the two heroes, but the other third hero recognized by all the papers was Bucko McDonald, because of what he did. And I'll read you a description of sort of why they viewed him as one of the best players on this team. So he says, this article is by Bob Murphy again, from Detroit Times, March 26th is the day after the game. So Bucko has a big night. And getting back to Bucko the Socko, what a fierce, brutal job of body checking he did. He scattered and splattered Maroons all over the ice like hapless objects being twisted and torn in the grip of a cyclone.
You said scattered and splattered.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I heard that. Man. I just freaking love it.
He didn't say it.
Yeah.
McDonald
you read it.
Yeah, I haven't even got to the most colorful lines. Yeah. So in getting back to Bucko the Socko, what a fierce, brutal job of body checking he did. He scattered and splattered Maroons all over the ice like helpless objects being twisted and torn in the grip of a cyclone. Having little else to do, this writer started keeping track of the men he sprawled on the glossy surface. After the total had reached 21, I quit counting. It became just another bruising bump. In the very first period, the first 6 men that McDonald checked went over like bulls hitting the forehead with an axe. He started with Ward, and then he sent Hooley Smith into a headlong spin. Twice in succession, he sent Marker spinning crazily to the ice. Then Shields was his victim. He got Marker a third time, a record of 6 for 6, which is good hitting even for Ty Cobb. It was then waved to the penalty box. He kept up the brutal assaults all through the game, and for those who love the Socko type of an athlete, well, it's a shame you couldn't have seen the young giant rattle their bones in the Forum last night. He rattled them as no hockey player ever has.
Jesus.
So that's what somebody that saw the game thought about Bucko.
I lost count at 21.
Oh my God. It reminds me of that NFL player that had the towel on with the numbers of the players, and he was crossing them off as he was taking them out. And he got penalized crazy. Back in, they would have been applauding him,
right,
and carrying him out on his shoulders for doing that. And it's just
I stopped counting at 21.
21.
Yeah. He was on a
It was just another victim. And he's but the great thing is when you're reading this, and he says he's reading this to you, and he says, for those that love this style of game, it's too bad you couldn't have been there. He's talking to us 80 years later, going, it's just too bad because I love that kind of game. He's it's just a shame you couldn't have been there last night.
I like this. And I really enjoy the physical part of hockey where they time their hits and it's got to be legal.
Yeah.
But back then,
it was Bucko. We talk about Bucko. Bucko was a smooth hitter.
Yeah.
He was he rarely got penalized. That's one of the things they've talked about with Bucko. There was a couple years after this, he went through the entire season without a single penalty, and his entire game was predicated on hitting people. This is a guy that was not just a mauler type of a hitter. He was a clean hitter. He would knock people down, and they were all clean hits. And so that's what made him special, was that he was able to remove other teams' players from the equation constantly,
Right.
consistently, and without removing himself from the game.
Mhm.
That's what made him special. And that's like, you know, and it just his personality. Like every once in a while, we're going to get to it. Like when he would score these goals and they were like he would score like 2 goals all year, but they were like 2 of the greatest goals ever. Like they were like just in moments where when you saw them, it emphasized or made the game, you know, at that moment. Like they weren't just random goals he scored at the end of some crap game. They were like big time goals.
Well, here's the thing though, right? There's no Sports Center. There's no 11 o'clock news.
Yeah.
There's no replay on this. So these words that
they're trying to convey
the
emotion.
This is the 11 o'clock news. This
Absolutely.
is the recap. This is
Absolutely.
these words are the Sports Center.
Yeah.
In a few grainy photographs. I mean, the photographs you have are great for the time. You know, I mean,
they are the Sports Center. They're trying
crap.
to write. Yeah, and these
you're
right, Jim.
The photos, it's like so hard. It's like because I want to get so into it and I want to see it the way we see it now, because I'm sure it would be just like so majestic to see some of these things that unfolded.
But they are doing that by telling us through the words. They convey it through.
No, and they do. And as a journalist, I love what these guys are doing.
You get it. You nailed it. That's exactly correct.
And the color and the fun that they bring to what they bring to life. I that's why 3/4 of my like indulgence in what we're doing here is listening to you
these
bring
quotes,
these words of these writers. I pull stuff out of here all the time.
That's why I used them. That's why I was so like liberal with the usage of these quotes. The way that I tried to act was as somebody that sort of set up the situation, and then I turned it over for the writers of the time. I tried to bring their voices back. So I've got quotes all through here. And like I said, with the Bucko chapter, I got really lucky because there was so much information on Bucko. I didn't have to say a single thing the entire chapter.
Yeah.
So yeah, like one of my favorite articles I've already read in a previous episode where we said like they were like the whirling dervishes or the red wolves on the prowl. They never went with the same descriptions. It was always like because they were conceptualizing in the games, you know, according to what they saw. And you're like, you know, and that's and you hit it right in the head. I'm glad you see that because that's absolutely what I was trying to do. That's absolutely what I'm trying to do. We're trying to do with the show is to bring, you know, let these people tell you what happened, because their job in 1935 was the primary conveyor of information about these games to their viewing audience. And that now is serving this, to their audience, whether, to the reader who was the audience that couldn't get to the game. And now 80 years later, here they are doing the same thing. They're, you know, through the microphone, through this power of media, you know, but from their words 80 years ago, we're conveying that story, this game to them. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that we're able to bring their words back like this, and their, you know, their original purpose of telling the games is once again being, you know, resurrected.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So I got one more little.
All right. Well, yeah. What else we got to cover today?
So one more last little quote and this is about Bucko again.
Okay.
I don't even have to flip the page for this. We love Bucko.
Come on,
I love
Bucko.
So anyways, this is like one of my favorite quotes of the entire book. All right. I had to bring this in.
Come on.
This is one of my favorite things. Okay.
All right.
So because Mud Brunito, there's a couple other articles about Mud where they're interviewing Mud after the game because he's a superstar. He's like, not a superstar, but he's a star at this moment. Like everybody knows his name. And he ends up becoming a Red Wings, he's in the Red Wings Hall of Fame, and he becomes a major goal-scoring power throughout the rest of his career with the Red Wings. But this is, of course, the goal he's always known for. But Mud Brunito, when they're asking Mud about, hey, Mud, you know, they're like, hey, you know, it's your typical sports questions where the sports writer says, hey, Mud, how what's it feel like to be like the greatest name in hockey today? Like everybody knows your name and you're the biggest star in the world. What does it feel like? And he's just like, well, I just want to thank everybody because everything's great. You know,
okay,
like,
easy, Michael.
Like your basic, your standard formalized sports answers.
Quit teasing, Tito.
But I'm just saying, like, formulaic response. We're like, I got to thank my teammates. Like with the article I just read about Heck Kilrea, where he's like, it was all heck. I just happened to be there. Like he's giving credit to everybody else. And he's like, what did the first thing you do? He's like, oh, I called my dad. That was the first thing I did. I told my dad how great it was. Like he's just giving these kind of standard formulaic questions, right?
I'm going to Disney World.
Well, so anyways, so that's why I wanted to set that up, because Mud was just, Mud Brunito was just kind of going, well, everything, I got to thank my teammates and stuff. But this is now where we bring in Bucko. Okay, this is where I want to start with. So the Bucko McDonald in this very next bit,
and Bucko was 21 plus hits. Is that
Bucko's this this awesome personality who like says whatever the hell he wants to say, right? So Bucko is not like Mud Brunito, okay? So that's what I'm saying. Like so here is Mud Brunito. I'm trying to get the date of it. It is this is the very next day.
And you're talking
it's Bob Murphy again. This is actually 2 days later.
Okay.
So this is 2 days later, right? So Bob Murphy again. So again, we just established that Mud Brunito as being this kind of laid back, giving credit to everybody else and, doing this formulaic sports response to an answer of like, what does it feel like to be on the top of the mountain? But in decided contrast to the quiet and modest Mud Brunito was pounding, pulverizing McDonald, kid defenseman who gave a history-making phenomenal performance of brutal body checking in the 176 minutes and 30 seconds of play. McDonald was up and about early. He went for a long hike, buying newspapers on every corner. He sat in the hotel lobby and acknowledged the salutes from passersby. He chuckled and smiled as he read glowing accounts of his work. He was here, there, and everywhere, missing not a word of anything, contributing his own versions of when the occasion presented. McDonald boasts the confidence of a king who issues orders from a high throne. He'll tell you before a game what he's going to do, and he'll be the first one after the game to confess he did it. Bucko the Socko abhors this thing called mock modesty, but with it all he is vastly different type than Dizzy Dean. Nothing Bucko says or does is offensive. The only thing Bucko and Diz have in common is that both produce with TNT results. When newsmen approach him, McDonald quickly will say, "Have I got time to talk with you? Say, I've got time to talk to newspapermen any hour of the day or night. Boy, just ask me something. I'll answer it." So that's why I love Bucko.
Hey!
Like, Bucko, I have this vision of, like, it doesn't say it in the quote, but I have this vision of Bucko. I actually wrote it in the movie like this, where Bucko is sitting on a stoop, a porch stoop.
Oh my God!
And he's got a bunch of kids going, "Hey, Bucko, tell me what's the morning." He's like, "I crushed that guy, and I crushed that guy." And
tell you, kids.
Yeah, and then like the newspaper guys are standing up there and they're going, "Hey, Bucko," and he's like, "Oh, come on over, guy." Like,
I got a story to tell.
yeah.
Here's
So
the
like,
thing.
so that's like the way I picture as Bucko as he's going. Like in contrast to Mud's who's going, "Oh, it was a team effort." And Bucko's going, "Yeah, I'll tell you everything you want to know."
Let me tell you
Bucko
what
is
I
great.
did. Okay, come
Yeah,
here.
That's what I'm saying. He's, like he actually says it in decided contrast to the quiet and modest Mud Brunito was pounding, pulverizing McDonald. Yeah.
It's alliteration. That's my jam. Alliteration is
Sure.
my jam.
I got time. I got time any other of the day to talk to you. Come on over.
Here's the thing about that in juxtaposition of today is like you get some of these NFL stars and they sit down at a press conference and they're like, the people asking them a question, they're like, "Yes, I'm here to fulfill my contractual obligations."
Yeah.
"Yes, I'm here to fulfill my contractual obligations." It's like, you suck.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
I want Bucko. I
Yeah.
want these guys who are like,
Yeah, but it
It's
gives you this
like
flavor to these
passion.
guys. Yeah.
about it.
But the other thing too is it's a guy who's like, that's what they're talking about in this case. Like he's like basically just sitting there hanging out. Like I was talking to a lady in the store today, and I forgot who we were talking about, but it was basically about how players used to be way more approachable than they are today.
Oh yeah.
Like they would be like, it was just a guy like the Red Wings or Tigers or whatever. Like in fact, I was reading about or I watched a movie about Ron LaFleur from the Tigers the other night. It's a Ron LaFleur story. If you've ever seen it, it's a great little movie. It's got,
No, it is. It is.
Oh, you've seen it? Okay.
Yeah.
But in the movie he's in prison, and they're like, one of the guys from the prison reaches out to I think his name is James Boutsikaris, who was he was a bar owner. And the bar owner knows Billy Martin, who's the manager of the Tigers. These guys came into the bar, they hung out at the places, they walked amongst the people. They weren't like these billionaires that like resided in a whole separate world.
No,
that's what I mean. Like these athletes and that were sort of part.
I'm just.
You'd have to climb Mount Olympus to like knock on their front door. Like these guys were like hanging out on the front stoop talking to kids, and Bucko's got a stack of every newspaper that mentions his name. He's reading the newspapers about his own story.
What was the family that had all the clippings that you were like astounded they had?
Well, in fact, if we want to bring that last slide up I have with Normie Smith. This is a photo of Normie Smith.
The hat trick one?
Yes. This is actually from Norma Smith. It was his daughter. So I met Norma. Norma Smith was an absolutely invaluable, and when I say invaluable, if you don't know what that word means, like incredibly valuable source of Red Wings information from this time. I mean, there was so many photos. Like I want to just thank her again because I've thanked her numerous times. I think I've even thanked her in the show already. But she actually invited me into her house. She had Normie Smith and his wife collected every clipping from his entire Red Wings career.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. Yeah, there's
it's
just
the
this
greatest
wealth of information.
Oh, it's like going to the library and there's an encyclopedia where it's like chronicles.
And it's already focused for
yes,
you.
Yeah, and it's every single game for a several years.
You are my microfiche friend.
Yeah. So in this photo, the photo that we have on the screen,
because like people, you and I get it because we were at we were at the end of it, right? People don't get going to the library
every day
and pulling out those reels. And putting them through the machine and then making those copies that were like they weighed like about a pound.
Yeah. Well, the photocopies of those, the photocopies I actually had for most of the photocopies I made, I like had it taped together and all this.
Yeah. It's
because the articles are so huge and long. You'd have to do it. Sometimes it costs you like $1 to just do one article.
I know. It
cost me probably tens of thousands to print all the information for this.
No, it's funny, but they had all these clips about him.
But these are actually
in like
clippings.
one collection. It was like
this is a dream come true.
And
not only that, but she had a couple,
Wicca clippings.
But she also had photos, literal photos, which is what I have to show on the screen.
Yeah, what do we got? What do we got?
Well, so these are two things from Norma Smith's collection from her father. And one of them
is the cup photo.
So the photo has like never been seen. That what we're showing on this photo has never been seen in the public, except for my books. This photo is Normie Smith right after the game, and they're like,
is that this legendary game?
Yeah, this is right after the game.
He looks just emaciated.
Yeah, emaciated, and they're making fun of how they're like taking his skates off for him and everything.
You a little tired?
Yeah, they're
come on, let's go get a skate.
All the players are like,
come on.
Yeah, they're taking the players off them.
Come on.
And so, and then also the other photo on the screen is a patch that they gave to Normie, where it says 3 shutouts in one.
A
single game.
Nice.
3 shutouts in a single game.
Well, you go for 9 flipping periods.
It's 3 games.
That's 3 games.
Absolutely. So so they made him a patch that actually says 3 for his jacket. Yeah, so a hat trick.
How many goalies get a hat trick?
So it was in a game. That's what they called it. Was a hat trick of shutouts in a single game. Nobody ever has gotten a patch like that. Yeah. So anyways, so Normie. So Normie, this is sort of like the last.
Wait. The older gentleman in that photo, is that the head coach
of Tommy Gorman? Oh no, that's Jack. Yeah, that photo we're just showing. That's Jack Adams. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's Jack Adams. Yeah. So, anyways,
I love the fun they're having. They just played a bloody 6-hour game,
right?
And now they're having fun.
I got a quote somewhere in the books.
Room.
One of the players said after that game, they went out for a couple beers after that game.
Hell yeah!
And they said when they went out,
how do you go home?
No, they said they went out and they had like 1 beer, and they said they were like wasted. They were like, I forgot which guy said it, but they were like, we had like 1 beer, and I was like, dude, I gotta go. I can't. I
gotta go home.
Like they were totally.
I had enough brandy and bourbon already.
So anyways, so here's like sort of the final quote that I have to talk about here. And this is so actually I'll fast forward a little bit because here, that's game number 1. And that was a huge game because it established the Red Wings as now they're ahead in the series. It's a 3-game series.
Yeah.
Right. They only have to, they have to win 3. So it's a 5-game series. They have to win 3 of 5. They have to win 3 out of 5
But the first game lasted 9
it's
periods.
The equivalent of 3 games in 1
periods.
game. Yes, 3. They played 3-game equivalent, right? And so the second game, this is what's even more remarkable, and absolutely nobody has talked about this, is the fact that in game number 2, Normie Smith shuts them out again. He shut them out again.
Jeez.
For this, it was only 3 periods.
Right.
So after the longest game, when was the next game? How
many? It was like
days
a day or so. It was like a day later. It was like it was 2, maybe 2 days later. Yeah, it was like the next game. Game 2 was on the 25th. The first game was on the 20. What was it? The
2nd or 3rd?
Looks like the 23rd. Yeah.
Right.
So it was like 25th, 20th. So there was like a day. They had a day off in between. But anyways,
what'd you do on your day off?
Nothing.
Slept.
Yeah. So game 2, so they're in Montreal for game 2, number 2, and they win. So Normie Smith shuts them out again.
Nice.
And then nobody ever talks about that. So he not only did have 3 shutouts in the same game, but a fourth shutout the next game against one of the best teams ever.
See, I know what you're gonna
Crikey.
do. I've
So
seen
4
this
games
already.
Yeah, so 4 games in a row, right?
I've
And so
studied you for 6
I've
hours.
seen you.
so now after game 2, the Wings are up 2-0, and they only got to win one more. So now they head back to Detroit.
All right.
This is the final quote I want to read. This is when they arrive in Detroit, and it supports everything I've said about about how this season made Detroiters fans of this team.
All right.
All right. About how they're how Red Wings are becoming, the Detroit is becoming a hockey, capital.
And they're up 2-0.
And they're coming back to Detroit, and they're 2 games up. They would have been happy with a split, winning 1-1 and coming back where they still this battle that was going to take them to 5 games,
which is still the same.
But
thing
now they're
today.
up 2 games, So anyway, so this is their arrival into Detroit. Okay, this is on the So this article comes out March 29th, 1936. All right, so Detroit's high-flying Red Wings, Stanley Cup bound, even though they say Stanley Cup bound, even though they technically weren't at this moment. There's still one more game to play, but he's like, they're so friggin' awesome. They're headed to the Stanley Cup. That's why he said it like that. So Detroit's high-flying Red Wings, Stanley Cup bound, came home this afternoon to be greeted by a rip-roaring reception and an impromptu downtown parade. Ugh. Hundreds of fans crowded Brush Street Station to pay tribute to Jack Adams' men who took both games from the Montreal Maroons on the latter's home ice. "Where's Smith?" yelled the crowd. "Give us Normie Smith." The gallant little Detroit goalie was one of the last to be cited by the crowd. He blushingly received the ovation and then entered a car with Mrs. Smith. Most of the players' wives were on hand to greet them. Cars had been provided for the occasion, and a police escort brought the players from the depot on a tour through part of a downtown district. Signs were painted on all the cars. "Stanley Cup bound," one sign read. "Hail the Conquering Heroes" was another. "City of Champions," another. Ruddy-faced Jack Adams beamed at the reception that carried with it much backslapping for him. "This is the first time anything ever happened like this so far as hockey is concerned in Detroit," he said. "It'll make the boys fight all the harder." This is the first time anything like this has ever happened in Detroit for hockey. This is the moment. This is when hockey.
Well, and we haven't had a football
born.
team. The Lions are in their second year in Detroit.
Yes,
right.
But they just
they
won the
won.
championship, yes.
They won the championship.
But they were still.
But it's only their second year.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been chances for ticker tape parades.
Detroit's just coming.
The Tigers. There's been some Tigers.
Absolutely. Well, they just won the first World. They're winning. We haven't even got to the celebration of the World Series. We didn't cover that yet.
And then Garwood has been celebratory. But it's the first time that it's like,
but they're coming
spilling over to hockey.
Yes.
It's like, let's get
they're
this going.
They're still in the quarterfinals.
Right.
They're the semifinals.
We're not done yet,
and they're not even done with the semifinals. There's still one game left to play, and they come back like conquering heroes. Like there's a parade for them. They're Jack.
Because I knew it was a spoiler alert. Because I know.
Because they just did something remarkable. They just had a They had a 9-period shutout, and then Normie followed it with a shutout of a game too against one of the best hockey teams ever.
Jeez.
They're like, man, this team is for real. They're excited. The hockey fans are excited because the final game is on Detroit home ice. Again, well, not the final game, but what ended up turning out to be the final game, which was a 2-1 Red Wings victory.
Right.
So they swept the Maroons. And so in the first period goal scored against Normie Smith in that game number 3 ends his shutout streak at 248 minutes and 30 seconds, the equivalent of 4 straight shutout games in the playoffs. In the playoffs, still a record today. Smith 6. So basically,
but you don't hear that. You don't. This never brought up.
No, and then so here's a quick fact. Is that in the entire regular season?
Let's get Belfour on the phone.
In the entire regular season,
with some
probably could.
So with some bourbon. Yeah.
So in contrast, right? Normie Smith in the regular season only had a total of 6 shutouts in the entire 48-game regular season.
But in the playoffs, he had 4.
And he had 6 in the entire regular season. That puts into context the top shutout guy in the entire NHL. Well, only had 9. That was Tiny Thompson. He had 9. And Normie has 4.
So who the 6-hour game
in 2 games?
Was there one? So was there one goalie in goal for that whole 6 hours?
Yeah, him and Lauren Chabot. Lauren Chabot was the Maroons goalie. That was the only guy. They didn't have a backup.
So they didn't
even have a backup
goalie. So they didn't pull the goalie.
So
at all. They didn't even have a backup goalie back then, dude. The backup goalie, the guy who was the backup goalie I tried to find information on
He's a
him, and he
trainer.
doesn't even like. No,
He was a trainer.
he was basically. There's a guy in the photo where there's two goalies laying on the ground with their like legs in other directions.
Yeah.
It looks like a
Who's that
little-
other guy? Nobody knows.
The other guy, literally, I couldn't even write about him.
Right.
He was like, I mean, almost like they just put him in the photo just to have another goalie. They didn't have another
I need to
goalie.
balance the
There
photo.
was-
Somebody put some pads
literally,
on.
like, I did my best. I didn't want to leave. Like my goal was to write a story about every person that was
Right,
in
right.
those. It was especially on the team photos.
But
and
the
that.
backup goalie wasn't needed.
They didn't. Well, they never. Like I don't even think he was like because because in the Blackhawks game, Normie Smith was injured in the first period. They talked about how he got hit in the groin by a puck, and then like they're like he was a game goal. He came back out and played through it. Like. But they're like,
They
there's
didn't
no
have anybody else.
they didn't have anybody. So if he
You
didn't
better-
do it, he didn't
Norman-
have a guy in goal.
Norman,
or something.
you can walk it off in the
Yeah,
hallway.
they didn't have anybody else.
You can walk it off because you're coming back
They
in.
don't have anybody else, Norman. We need you.
I broke my dick, coach.
Oh, yeah, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
So
Well, rub some
anyways,
dirt and get back in there.
so anyways, so
right.
the Red Wings. This is the final little bit here.
All right.
Is that game 3? So the Red Wings win game 3. They had I've got there's the book number 1 has got a ton of great quotes because there was no animosity between the two teams.
Sure.
They both shook hands. They were all hugging
There
each
were
other.
other
They
battle
recognized-
royales. This was just
They-
hockey.
Game recognized game.
Right.
The Maroons recognized how great that the Red Wings had played and what a dogfight the two teams had for. I mean, they played the equivalent of 4 games in 2 games.
Right.
So they were, or 5 games, including the third game.
Can
So
you imagine,
anyways,
though?
So
Good. They're going through the line. Good game. I'm tired.
but they
Good
were,
game.
but all the
I'm tired.
Maroons,
Yeah.
the Maroons
Good
swarmed
game.
Normie Smith. They just,
Oh,
they
did
all,
they?
oh
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
They showed him like. There was the rivalry between the Blackhawks and Red Wings was totally different than the Maroons. The Maroons were there was like two of the best teams in the league slugging it out. There was no really, there wasn't like the animosity. I didn't even see any fights. There was really no
Right.
fights in this game.
No, it was all pure hockey.
Pure, exactly. So there wasn't like the scrum hockey like they played. Sometimes it was the Blackhawks. Sometimes it would be scrum hockey, and other times it would be clean
Sure.
hockey because they were just trying to win the game.
Right.
But anyway, so the final quote I want to lead off or end with
Yeah.
here is again another Bob Murphy quote. He's been getting quite a bit of attention here. So this comes after this comes at the end of game 3, and it's March 30th, 1936. Again, Detroit Times. Bob Murphy about this. So there's the Red Wings are celebrating in the locker room, and so about this time, someone broke through the door with news. And broke through means not they say hit with an axe. They
Sure.
just came in the
Yeah,
room,
yeah.
into the locker room. So about this time, someone broke through the door with news that the Olympics had defeated Syracuse to clinch the IHL semifinals.
Nice.
So at the same moment
Game's on.
that the Red Wings had just won their semifinals, their minor league team,
Moving up.
they had also just swept their semifinals.
We can't lose.
Both
We
teams.
can't let the little boys show. We can't let
teams
the little sister
Can't
show
let
up the
little
big brother.
show us up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Minor and major league teams are now both
On
advancing to the
the way.
champions, to the finals of their respective champions.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Yeah, we know. We've talked about it because
We've already given it away.
I know. They were out of town. They had to come back
But
in
the
town,
fact
and
that
they
it's-
went to the final game for the minor league team, which is great.
But the fact
We're
that
gonna
it's
get
all
to that.
happening at the exact same time.
Effing love it, man.
It's like this symmetry. I mean, the great like just think about this for a quick second. All right.
The
We just talked
energy's
about
got to
this-
be nuts,
We
man.
just talk about how this season, which I think is this incredible season, it ends with this huge rivalry dogfight with the Blackhawks. And then the very first game, they're playing against one of the best NHL teams in history. They're playing against this incredible team. And the very first game is the longest game in NHL history. Like, how much do you want this
And
championship?
they were
Yeah.
the best team in history at that point in time.
Exactly. They're one.
Right.
And, Tommy Gorman, the credentials that this man has are that's why I point to he goes, this is one of the best teams like in NHL history. And you might want to write that off and say, oh, well, that's just a coach being flattering about a team, whatever. But his credentials, the fact that he's already, I mean, at this point, I think he'd won 4 Stanley Cup championships already. And he's like, this is the best team I ever built. It's like, his talent alone suggests that the team that he's also coaching is also probably pretty good too.
And which speaks, and I'll share this, which speaks to Tommy Gorman because he built an incredible team
Absolutely.
to compete against the Red Wings team that was at the pinnacle of their talent.
Yeah.
At
This is
that
a
point
yeah.
in time.
All right,
So
guys.
they had to go through this incredible team. That's what I'm saying. And then in the fact that the first game of the playoffs was the longest game in NHL history.
Love it.
And it's this story we're talking about.
How did-
Like
yeah,
it's
that's-
the
that's-
most grind out of like. Imagine if I went in there like
Movies don't write
game,
themselves.
yeah,
they do.
like game number 1. Yeah, they beat the Maroons. It was cool.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it was the longest game ever. Like,
Ever.
it was
All right, guys, we got to hit it though.
Yeah, we gotta get out of here.
It's just everybody who's been following along the City of Champions. Thank you. Subscribe, follow, like, leave a comment. We appreciate you. Charles, I I love all.
We love this stuff. This is
the
amazing.
language you
Wait
bring
till we
to
get
life.
to the finals. We haven't even got to the Stanley
no.
Cup finals. Wait till
Matt,
we get to the finals.
Thanks
We're
for being
coming
here,
up on the
gentlemen.
Cheers.
We're
All
out.
4 drinks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Keep your stick on the ice, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.